Most people spend decades building their retirement portfolio. They watch the number grow, they track the balance, they check on it every few months. And for most of your working life, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. But as retirement gets closer, the question slowly changes. It's not just how much have I saved? It becomes, how is this actually going to behave once I'm living on it? And that's a very different question, because retirement isn't just about having a number, it's about how that number responds when real life shows up. And real life always shows up. So before someone retires, one of the main things that I want to understand is this: if something unexpected happens early, how does the plan respond? Not just on paper, not just a clean projection, but in reality. A lot of retirement projections look fine. The income works, the long-term growth seems reasonable, the line on the chart moves steadily upward. And there's nothing wrong with that as a starting point. But projections usually assume things move in a relatively smooth path. Markets don't move in smooth paths. Inflation doesn't move in a smooth path. Life definitely doesn't move in smooth paths. And once you stop working, you don't have the same ability to just wait it out like you did in your 40s or 50s. That's why I don't just ask, does this work over 30 years? I ask, what happens if the first few years are messy? Because that's when confidence is the most fragile. Now, I sometimes explain it like this. If you were building a bridge, you wouldn't design it for average traffic. You would design it for stress, right? You look at heavy trucks, strong winds, years of wear, not because you expect a storm every day, but because you know storms happen. Retirement planning is very similar. A plan that only works when conditions are ideal isn't really a plan. It's just a projection. Now, what we're really trying to build is something durable, something that doesn't feel fragile the first time markets wobble. So what does that actually mean in practice? Before someone retires, I'll walk through a few very normal scenarios. What happens if the markets are volatile in the first couple years? What if inflation stays higher than we expected for longer? What if one spouse lives well into their 90s? What if you spend more in your 60s traveling, helping family, enjoying life, less later in life? What if healthcare costs pick up in your late 70s or 80s? None of these are extreme scenarios, they're just real possibilities. Now, behind the scene, I use planning software to model different versions of those situations. Not to get overly technical, not to debate assumptions, but just to see how the structure responds. Does income remain steady? Does liquidity get tight? Do we end up putting pressure on the investments at the wrong time? Now, the goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. If there's fragility in the structure, I'd rather see it before retirement than discover it 5 years into it. One of the most common issues I see is what they call everything in one bucket planning. All of the money invested the same way. All the withdrawals come from the same place. There's no separation between short-term needs and long-term growth. That can work while you're accumulating, but in retirement, it can create unnecessary stress. Instead, I prefer separating roles and responsibilities. Liquidity is for the first few years. Reliable income is designed to cover essential monthly expenses. Long-term growth is positioned for the later decades. When these roles are clearly defined, the decision-making process gets calmer. You're not forced to sell long-term assets just because the market is down. You're not watching the news and wondering whether you need to change everything. You've already anticipated that volatility is part of the journey, and that changes how retirement feels. It feels more intentional. It feels less reactive. Now, there's another layer that most people underestimate, and that's taxes. Retirement isn't just about markets, it's about income timing. When Social Security starts, when required minimum distributions begin, whether there's an opportunity for Roth conversions in your early 60s. Small tax decisions early in retirement can compound over decades. So part of pressure testing a plan is also looking at how income flows through tax brackets over time. Whether required distributions later create pressure we could have reduced earlier. How today's decisions affect flexibility 10 or 15 years from now. Again, it's not trying to optimize everything down to the penny, but it's trying to reduce avoidable pressure. You can't remove uncertainty from retirement. There will always be volatility. There will always be surprises. That's normal, but what you can do is design a plan that expects that, and that's really the difference. It's the difference between hoping things go smoothly and knowing your plan was built with reality in mind. If you've done a good job saving and still feel a quiet sense of, is this actually going to work? That's not unusual. Often it's not about the size of the portfolio, it's about whether the structure has been tested. That's what thoughtful retirement planning is really about. Not chasing returns, not reacting to headlines, but building something durable enough that you can actually relax in retirement. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.